The Kargil War of 1999 remains one of the most significant and intense conflicts between India and Pakistan. It took place in the mountainous terrain of the Kargil. The war was marked by high-altitude battles, where soldiers fought in extreme weather conditions, with temperatures plunging to sub-zero levels. What started as a covert infiltration by Pakistani forces into Indian territory escalated into full-scale warfare, drawing the attention of the entire world. In this video, we will dive deep into the events leading up to the Kargil War, the key military operations, and the personal stories of the brave soldiers who fought in these treacherous conditions. We'll examine the political and military strategies, the impact of international diplomacy, and the ultimate resolution of the conflict. The Kargil War serves as a testament to the resilience and courage of both nations' armed forces, and its lessons continue to resonate today. Stay tuned as we recount the heroic tales and significant moments that shaped this defining chapter in India-Pakistan relations. On September 30, 1997, the Chief of Army Staff in New Delhi received news of heavy shelling in the Kargil sector, resulting in civilian casualties and property damage. The civil administration was trying to control the situation and restore confidence. Gujral held a meeting the next day to review the situation. The town and the Srinagar-Kargil road have been vulnerable to the Pakistani Army's interdiction since the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War. After the 1972 Shimla Agreement, the Pakistan Army had occasionally engaged in firing and shelling on this road. Padmanabhan, who would later become the Chief of Army Staff, detailed the intense shelling they had endured. He then laid out his plan to counterattack and target the Pakistani artillery guns the following morning. On October 1, 1997, the COS began official work in his new rank and reviewed a ceremonial guard of honor near his office. The Prime Minister and his cabinet colleagues endorsed the Army's retaliatory action in response to the shelling. 20 months later, Pakistani Army personnel dressed as jihadi militants or mujahideen infiltrated through gaps between Indian defenses in one of the world's most rugged terrain, achieving a tactical surprise. The ensuing Kargil War ended in a politico-military victory for India. The nuclear tests conducted by India and Pakistan in 1998 marked a significant shift in their relations, with India ending its nuclear ambiguity and Pakistan following suit. The possession of nuclear capability justified the Indian government's nuclear capabilities in the immediate vicinity. The discriminatory nature of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and increasing international pressure due to the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty and the Fissile Material Control Treaty. Pakistan followed suit, despite its Indo-centric security policy and known nuclear technical capability. Both countries received domestic support, but faced criticism and sanctions from foreign countries. The Taliban's emergence and spread of control in Afghanistan pose a serious security threat, and Pakistan's nuclear capabilities are now linked to its political and military strategy. The atomic tests also led to two simultaneous developments within Pakistan's power centers, a positive development at the political level, where it joined India in developing confidence-building measures and tried to resolve disputes through peaceful dialogues, and a negative development within its army, where it used the nuclear threshold for initiating a limited war against India. The Lahore Declaration was signed in 1999 between Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, following the imposition of sanctions on both countries. The declaration acknowledged the nuclear dimension and reiterated the commitment to implementing the Shimla Agreement. It included a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, for bilateral consultations on security concepts and nuclear doctrines. The MOU included 7 clauses on nuclear and conventional ballistic missiles, mutual consultations, and communication between the two sides. The declaration also included a separate paragraph on cross-border terrorism. However, the inclusion of cross-border terrorism was substituted with general statements that the governments agreed to refrain from intervention and interference in each other's internal affairs. The Lahore Declaration was incorporated after the Proxy War in Jammu and Kashmir, which began after the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan in the late 1980s. The Proxy War in Jammu and Kashmir was initiated by Pakistan after the Soviet withdrawal and involved guerrilla warfare. In 1990, Dr. Farooq Abdullah resigned as the Chief Minister of Pakistan, leading to the resumption of governor's rule and the rise of president's rule. The army deployment began in April 1990, initially aiding civil authorities in maintaining law and order. In July, the valley and a 20-kilometer belt along the LOC in Poonch and Rajouri districts were declared disturbed areas, and the Armed Forces Special Power Act, J&K 1990, was promulgated. More army units were inducted for counter-infiltration and counterinsurgency operations and to restore normalcy. Milestones in terrorism included the siege of the Hazrat Bal Mosque in Srinagar, twice the spread of terrorist activities to Doda since 1994, the Charar-e-Sharif burning incident in May 1995, and the kidnapping and killing of 5 foreign tourists in 1995. The army and paramilitary forces carried out protracted operations to contain terrorism and create a safe atmosphere for the political process. Parliamentary elections in Jammu and Kashmir dealt a severe blow to the Pakistan-sponsored Proxy War, and the army was withdrawn from Baramulla, Sopore, Srinagar, Badgam, and Anantnag. After 1997, Pakistan started focusing on the Muslim population in the interior areas of Poonch, Rajouri, Nowshera, and Doda districts. The frequency and intensity of high-caliber weapons and artillery firing across the LOC started showing an upswing, and the ISI passed terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir onto the hands of foreign jihadi mercenaries. Pakistan Army Chief General Pervez Musharraf's hesitation to greet Atal Bihari Vajpayee during the Lahore Declaration was due to the ongoing Operation Batra. He flew across the line of control in a helicopter to meet the advanced elements participating in Operation Batra, a significant act of personal daring. On the day of the Lahore Declaration, violence erupted in Jammu and Kashmir, with jihadi elements, specifically Jamaat-e-Islami, protesting against Vajpayee's visit. Indian military intelligence intercepted radio messages from across the border, exhorting all jihadi elements inside Jammu and Kashmir to increase violence. Between February and April 1999, 618 incidents of violence occurred in Jammu and Kashmir, resulting in 487 civilians, security forces personnel, and terrorists killed. Major terrorist incidents included abductions of police personnel, landmine blasts, attacks on police barracks, and attacks on foreign mercenaries. After the Lahore Declaration, political leaders expected that cross-border infiltration and militant activities in Jammu and Kashmir would gradually taper off. However, the Directorate General of Military Operations assessed the impact of the Lahore Declaration on the ground, stating that there could be some escalation in the proxy war due to Pakistan's internal compulsions and politico-military situation. In April 1999, the strategic environment in India and Pakistan was, rapidly changing due to factors such as post-Cold War era assertion and unilateralism, nuclear and missile testing, and increased coercive diplomacy. Other pressures included encouraging secessionist elements, selling arms and military equipment, imposing sanctions, and attempting to isolate nations that do not subscribe to unequal treaties. Developing countries, where ethnic and religious societies have not fully gelled, are more vulnerable to threats. The nuclear halves of the world have put, considerable political and economic pressure on both India and Pakistan after the Pokhran II and Chagai Hills tests. However, there has been increased strategic and military cooperation between China and Pakistan, including high-level visits, arms sales, and developments in Afghanistan. However, Pakistan's military strategy against India is based on, low-intensity conflict or nuclear conflict, and conventional retaliation is not expected to fructify. Defense capabilities and deterrence are necessary to pursue national interests, and strategic weapons reduce the chances of an all-out high-intensity war. Conventional wars are likely to be limited in time, space, and weaponry, and a lower threshold increases the chances of low-intensity conflicts. The Lahore Declaration and the Comprehensive Border Movements, or CBMs, were a justified long-term approach to bring about reconciliation in Indo-Pak relations. Military commanders in Jammu and Kashmir continued to counter proxy wars, ensuring a conducive operational environment and maintaining effective deterrence. In 1998, Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff, General Jehangir Karamat, resigned due to disagreements with Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif over the National Security Council and its composition. He was replaced by General Pervez Musharraf, who planned and carried out reconnaissance and logistic preparations for Operation Batra, aiming to alter the line of control east of the Zojila, revive jihadi terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, highlight the Indo-Pak dispute, and capture Turtuk. The operation was launched in April-May 1999, under the direct command of Major General Javed Hassan, Force Commander Northern Areas. Nawaz Sharif claimed that Musharraf hid all Kargil details from him, and learned about the Pakistan Army's involvement from the Indian Prime Minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Post-war intelligence reports indicate that Nawaz Sharif was briefed about the Kargil plan first in December 1998 or January 1999 and again in March 1999. Many Indian and Pakistani political leaders believe that either Musharraf was not fully briefed about the plan and its political and military implications, or he did not comprehend the implications. Civil-military relations in Pakistan are worse than in India, due to competing power centers and limited knowledge of their armed forces. The Pakistan Army has consistently taken advantage of the Muslim cult of the warrior, viewing itself as the savior of Pakistan above all else. The Siachen Glacier dispute is a significant factor in the Pakistani Army's intrusion into the Kargil sector, as it aims to recapture a part of the glacier and disrupt Indian control. Jammu and Kashmir, a region steeped in history and natural beauty, has always been a focal point of geopolitical interest. This area is divided between India and Pakistan, creating a complex and often tense border situation. The Jammu and Kashmir state is divided between India and Pakistan along a 1,049-kilometer-long international border, the line of control, and the actual ground position line. The AGPL terminates at Indira Kol, near the Shaksgam Valley, which was illegally ceded to China by Pakistan in 1964. To the southwest of Jammu and Kashmir, there is a continuation of the Indo-Pak international border through Punjab. This part of the boundary is marked clearly on maps and is manned on the Indian side by the Border Security Force. The line of control is about 740 kilometers long between the international border and point NJ9842 near Turtuk in Ladakh. The terrain in the hinterland is difficult to negotiate and underdeveloped with limited communication networks. A major road artery runs parallel to the LOC, linking Jammu with Rajouri and Panch, from which forward troop deployment areas are linked by feeder roads. Between Pir Panjal and Kaubal Gali on the Great Himalayan Range, the terrain along the LOC becomes more mountainous, with most of the army posts located between 9,000 feet and 13,000 feet. There is a good communication network within the Kashmir Valley, but the road network in the forward areas is very limited. For counter-infiltration purposes, this stretch presents even more difficulties due to steep slopes, deep valleys, and heavy snowfall during winter. The Great Himalayan Range and Ladakh Range have distinct terrain and topography, with the line of control running along high mountain ridges and peaks. Dras is known as the second coldest inhabited place on Earth outside the polar regions, and the area is divided into different parts by the Shyok, Shido, and Indus rivers, with the Zanskar Mountains in between. The line of control is characterized by thinly populated areas, with 95% of Dras inhabitants being Sunni and 5% Shia Muslims, and the remaining population being mostly Buddhist. The three ethnic groups have become considerably polarized, except in the Ladakh Scouts of the Indian Army, where all have a good representation and maintain complete harmony. Most Shia Muslims and all Buddhists oppose jihadi militancy, so the area has remained largely unaffected even during the height of the Proxy War. Deployment along the actual ground position line. The operational responsibility for guarding Jammu and Kashmir along the international border, the line of control, the actual ground position line with Pakistan, and the line of actual control with China, rests with Headquarters Northern Command. In 1999, this responsibility was divided between 15 and 16 Corps, with 16 Corps responsible for the southern portion, and 15 Corps for the Valley sector. The 3 Infantry Division, under 15 Corps, had operational responsibility for areas east of the Great Himalayan Range, including Kaubal Gali and Zojila. After the Kashmir Valley became engulfed in militancy, the Army Headquarters, in consultation with Headquarters Northern Command, decided to induct Headquarters 28 Infantry Division and 53 Infantry Brigade from Western Ladakh to the Kashmir Valley. This division has been deployed west of Kaubal Gali Zojila passes for guarding the line of control and counter-infiltration and counter-militancy/terrorism operations. The signing of the Peace and Tranquility Accord with China in 1993 further reduced forces in Ladakh, with Headquarters 70 Infantry Brigade handing over its operational responsibility to 114 Infantry Brigade and placing Khalsi as a reserve. In March 1997, Headquarters 70 Infantry Brigade was moved to the Kashmir Valley and involved in counter-militancy/terrorism operations. This may have contributed to Pakistan's decision to intrude into the Kargil sector in 1999. In September 1998, the brigade was moved back to Ladakh, leaving behind 2 battalions. On the eve of the Kargil War, operational deployment under 3 Infantry Division was as follows: 121 I Infantry Brigade with 3 infantry battalions and 1 BSF battalion, responsible for the area along the line of control between Kaubal Gali and Chorbatla, 102 Infantry Brigade with 3 infantry battalions, and 70 Infantry Brigade with 1 battalion located near Leh as a reserve in Ladakh. Gaps in defenses exist in the mountains due to the barren terrain, limited roads and tracks, and limited threat perception. The responsibility for the defense of this sector was restricted to 1 Infantry Brigade with 3 infantry battalions and 1 BSF battalion to maintain surveillance. During the Army Chief's tenure, no recommendation was made to Army Headquarters for the deployment of additional formations in this sector. India faced a surprise during the Kargil War due to intelligence failure and poor surveillance. The Joint Intelligence Committee, or JIC, was criticized for its lack of importance and complacency in providing feedback. The Pakistan Army's failure to anticipate or identify military action was a result of a significant deficiency in intelligence collection, reporting, collating, and assessing. The Regional and Area Warfare and Analysis, known as R&AW, was responsible for gathering and analyzing external intelligence, including military deployments and intentions. In 1999, the role and capability of Directors General of the Army, Air Force, and Navy Intelligence were limited, primarily focusing on tactical military intelligence and signal intelligence. The Pakistani Army's focus on reinforcing its deployment along the line of control was influenced by the scenario of no threat of war with India. The Joint Intelligence Committee monthly review of July 1998 suggested that the Pakistani army had been resorting to small arms and artillery firing to facilitate the infiltration of trained jihadi militants into Jammu and Kashmir. Intelligence reports and assessments focused on militancy in the Kargil region of Pakistan during the 1999 to 2000 conflict. The first indication of Pakistan getting ready for a conventional war was received through a report from the National Security Council Secretariat dated 14 June 1999. However, after the war, intelligence agencies at the tactical level spent considerable time and resources on military-oriented intelligence missions, with core intelligence groups focusing mostly on proxy war-centric efforts. The Kargil sector in Afghanistan was a major disappointment due to poor operational surveillance, lack of systematic patrolling, and the absence of additional Pakistani infantry units inducted into the FCNA. The Indian Army and Air Force did not have any unmanned aerial vehicles or UAVs to carry out aerial surveillance, leading to neglect of this aspect. The Kargil Review Committee noted that Pakistan achieved strategic surprise in the Kargil sector due to its long-standing absence of line-of-control violations and perceived unsuitability for military operations, especially during winter. The Pakistan Army used stealth and deception tactics to achieve surprise and deception during the Kargil War, dressing regular army troops as jihadis and transmitting radio transmissions in Balti and Pashto languages. The bulk of the troops infiltrated across the line of control in small groups in April 1999, with poor logistics negatively impacting their operation. The Pakistan Army gained further expertise in planning and conducting integrated operations with jihadi militants, with regular troops and ex-servicemen trained to fight alongside them under a command and control organization headed by serving officers of the army. The deception succeeded until early June 1999 due to the lack of intelligence reports on the Pakistani Army's involvement, the focus on jihadi terrorist camps and concentrations in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and the effectiveness of the Pakistani electronic deception plan. Many Pakistani writers and analysts have attempted to label Northern Light Infantry battalions as irregulars to differentiate them from regular troops. However, this is only to create confusion. The status of these units is similar to the Ladakh Scouts, and factors such as organization, weapons, equipment profile, officers' leadership pattern, and command and control hierarchy during both peacetime and wartime must be considered. The Northern Light Infantry battalions are fully integrated with Pakistan Army brigades deployed in the northern areas, and their officers are assigned from the regular army. Documents captured later show that the strength of the officers had been built up well before the war. After the Kargil War, 93 Pakistani Army personnel were decorated with gallantry awards, including 2 with Nishan-e-Haidar, the highest gallantry award of the country. Political circumstances played a role in helping the Pakistanis to surprise and obfuscate matters in the fog of war that followed the Lahore Declaration of February 1999. After the declaration, there was considerable euphoria in political circles, and Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee believed that Indo-Pak relations would improve and cross-border infiltration would taper off and eventually cease. When initial reports of armed intrusion into the Kargil sector started trickling in mid-May 1999, there was a flurry of Track 2 level exchanges to ascertain from the Pakistani Prime Minister about the situation. Intelligence agencies in India often provide their clients with the conclusions they want, leading to political leaders' complacency and failure to anticipate intrusions during the harsh Himalayan winter. This is a result of the Indian system being structurally designed to ensure that leadership gets the intelligence it wants. However, it is difficult for military personnel in India to pass judgment due to their proximity to political leadership and the government's reluctance to discuss intelligence failures in public or parliament. In May 1999, the Indian Army was confident that the intrusion in Kargil was not a jihadi operation, but was planned and executed by the Pakistan Army. However, most intelligence reports continued to point to jihadi militants, and intelligence sources tried to defend themselves by referring to memos sent by them about the location of jihadi camps in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. An intercepted teleconversation between two Pakistani army officers revealed that the operation was not a jihadi operation, but a military aggression, planned and executed by the Pakistan Army. The intelligence system tends to work at the highest level, even in a war situation, and there is a tendency to hoard information to gain an upper hand in the turf competition. On 10 May 1999, the service chief left for an official visit to Poland and the Czech Republic. The Ministry of Defense, Ministry of External Affairs, and the Prime Minister's office approved such a visit twice, initially as an annual plan. After approval, information regarding incoming and outgoing visits is intimated to the concerned foreign governments through the High Commission or the Embassy. The second time, documents on the visit abroad giving the exact itinerary are processed through the Ministries of Defense, External Affairs, Finance, and then through the Cabinet Secretariat and finally the PMO. The situation on the Kargil and Siachen fronts did not indicate any need for the service chief to cancel his planned visit. The Director General Military Operations, Lieutenant General Nirmal Chander Zissaint, had visited Leh and Kargil on 4 to 5 May 1999, and there were no situation reports of any intrusion. The Northern Army Commander, Lieutenant General Hari Mohan Khanna, visited Headquarters 15 Corps on 8 May 1999, but there were no situation reports of any intrusion. On 14 May, the DGMO informed the service chief that the Defense Minister, the Northern Army Commander, and GOC 15 Corps had gone over to Srinagar and stated that the infiltrators would be thrown out in the next 48 hours. On 15 May, the service chief left for Prague in the Czech Republic, where he was informed that Pakistani Mujahideen had captured some Indian areas near the LOC in Jammu and Kashmir. On 17 May, the DGMO and VCOAS reported that there was little progress in identifying infiltration in some areas, and patrols sent by units and brigades had either failed or made little progress. The number of infiltrators could be more, and Pakistan Army involvement appeared to be more than usual. The VCOAS advised seeking assistance from the Air Force, particularly armed or attack helicopters, for further surveillance and detection of the intrusion. However, the air chief rejected the request for additional support other than transport helicopters, citing that attack helicopters could not operate at that altitude and that using air power would escalate the conflict. The decision to continue with the trip abroad or cancel a part of it was purely circumstantial due to complacency and routine surveillance during winter months and poor intelligence assessments. All commanders in the chain of Northern Command, including the Defense Minister, had visited the affected area during this period, conveying confidence in handling the local situation successfully. Upon returning to New Delhi on the 20th of May, the DGMI provided the latest information and an assessment of the current situation. The VCOAS informed them that the exact number of intruders, their identity, and the extent of deployment in some sectors were still not clear. The induction of 56 Mountain Brigade from 8 Mountain Division into Dras was nearly complete, and some Rashtriya Rifles units were moved to the Dras-Kargil sector for providing rear area security. A brigade from 6th Mountain Division was cleared for this purpose, and Headquarters Northern Command was informed that the author would be visiting Udhampur, Srinagar, and Kargil on the 22nd of May. The inability to identify the intruders for a considerable length of time contributed to the surprise and fog of war in the Kashmir conflict. Intelligence reports and radio intercepts indicated that the intruders were jihadi militants from Pakistan, wearing black salwars and kameez. However, the Pakistan DGMO continued to deny any knowledge of the ground situation. The intensity of mortar and artillery fire indicated that the Pakistan Army was involved and closely supporting the intruders. The Prime Minister asked the National Security Council Secretary, NSCS, to review the issue of jihadi militants' involvement and prepare a report for the CCS. After intercepting telephone conversations between the Pakistan Army Chief of General Staff and General Pervez Musharraf, the NSCS secretary reported that nearly 70% of the intruders appeared to be Pakistani regulars, and only 30% were jihadi militants. The Prime Minister did not pay much attention to this assessment, and the Secretary of the NSCS whispered to the heads of R and AW and the Intelligence Bureau, "We have to save their honor too." This incident highlights the strategic and tactical intelligence failure in assessing the real intentions of the Pakistanis. On the 9th of June, the Prime Minister discussed deficiencies of weapons and equipment in Headquarters 15 Corps in Srinagar, particularly with respect to units deployed in the Kargil sector. He instructed the Army and Command Headquarters staff to release the required items from depots outside Northern Command and for interformation transfers. The Pakistan Army, Navy, and Air Force are working together to create strategic asymmetry along the western border. The intrusion, which extended from the Mashko sector to subsector west, was suspected to be led by Pakistani jihadi militants. The Cabinet Committee on Security, CCS, requested restraint but rejected it due to disagreement within the COSC and ongoing Track 2 dialogue between India and Pakistan. The situation in Pakistan was discussed with the Chief of Staff, COSC, and operational staff, focusing on the Air Force's presence in Kargil and other areas. The Air Force's superiority in the air and seas must be used to create asymmetrical advantage along the western border. The government expected to clear the intrusion and restore the sanctity of the LOC without crossing the LOC or the border. Sushil Kumar and Air Chief Marshal Anil Yashwant Tipnis agreed on an integrated approach to employing all assets optimally, giving them maximum strategic and tactical advantage. However, Air Chief Marshal Tipnis had not agreed to the use of air power in the COSC, citing concerns about the use of attack helicopters and the potential to escalate the conflict. The Army codenamed the operation Operation Vijay, Victory, and took all necessary action to ensure victory. Pakistani Prime Minister Vajpayee and Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif stated that they would not allow any intrusion to take place in their territory. Following the CCS meeting, fresh operational instructions were issued to Headquarters Northern Command, focusing on eliminating interference on the Srinagar-Kargil road, stabilizing the situation in all sectors, and removing intrusions through deliberate operations. The military strategy was to adopt an aggressive posture in the air on the sea and along the LOC and the international border with Pakistan, to prevent Pakistan from focusing only on Kargil and maintain their capability for undertaking offensive and defensive operations at very short notice. Regular military briefings were conducted in the Army Headquarters Military Operations Room almost daily, attended by representatives from the Ministries of Defense, External Affairs, Home, and Intelligence agencies. The Military Operations Directorate consisted of a team of professionally competent and dedicated officers led by Director General Lieutenant General Nirmal Chander VAJ, and Assistant Director General Major General J.J. Singh. The three service chiefs briefed the President of India twice, the Vice President once, all governors and chief ministers once, and an all-party meeting in the Parliament House on the progress of operations. The Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan spoke to each other over the telephone hotline every Tuesday, providing valuable insight into Pakistani thought processes and perceptions. This arrangement proved useful later when the Pakistan Army sought withdrawal from their territory. The clearance of the strategy by the CCS on 24 May and the employment of air power caused events to move rapidly. From 26 to 30 May, several significant developments took place, including Prime Minister Vajpayee declaring that the new situation was not infiltration, but a move to occupy new territory. On 27 May, Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif made the first mention of the use of nuclear capability in the Kargil War, and offered to send his foreign minister, Sartaj Azizaz, to New Delhi. After 24 May 1999, the Cabinet Committee on Security and other officials were informed about the situation in the Kargil sector and the political military strategy to deal with developments. The strategy was to get the intrusion vacated, with no formal mobilization or declaration of war. The three chiefs of India had to develop a military strategy that involved deploying forces to cross the international border and line of control at short notice, exerting pressure on Pakistan, and preventing its forces from focusing only on Kargil. The military's immediate tasks included issuing instructions for mobilization, inducting additional troops and resources into Jammu and Kashmir, maintaining operational readiness, maintaining alertness on the border with China, and monitoring the military situation closely. The objective was to launch an offensive anywhere across the international border or line of control within 6 days, with maximum security and without disturbing normal air, rail, and road traffic. The Army chief visited various headquarters and deployments along the northern and western border, ensuring that Northern Command and 15 Corps were accorded priority. The Army headquarters formulated a detailed operational strategy for 15 Corps, which involved containing and isolating intrusion, exterminating threats to National Highway 1A, safeguarding surface communications, occupying gaps between defenses with enhanced surveillance, and eliminating existing intrusions in the given order of priority. On 30 May 1999, the author visited Srinagar, Dras, and Kargil, accompanied by Defense Minister George Fernandez. They visited these locations after returning from their trip abroad and after the current fighting began. The author met with 3 high-ranking officers, including Lieutenant General Krishan Pal, Major General Mohinder Puri, and Major General Ashok Haku, who were part of the Northern Command Reserve Formation. The author found the atmosphere in Dras and Kargil lacking, with bunkers being constructed next to existing barracks, making movement in the area dicey. The tactical headquarters of 3 Mountain Division had been moved from Leh to the erstwhile headquarters of 121I Infantry Brigade located in Kargil. Brigadier Surinder Singh, commander of this brigade, was visibly unhappy about being ousted from his permanent location. Diplomacy and defense were also under pressure from Pakistan and the international community in New Delhi to talk to Islamabad. Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif suggested stopping airstrikes as a precondition for talks, but India accepted this offer. The author worried that any political negotiations or attempts to seek a diplomatic solution would result in a militarily disadvantageous solution for India. On the 5th of June, 1999, the author addressed the entire Indian Army through a special log. He stated that the enemy had violated the line of control in 3 infantry division sector and made intrusions into their territory with strategic and political aim. The Indian Prime Minister asserted that if the intrusion should be used to alter the line of control through talks, the proposed talks would end before they began. Sartaj Aziz arrived in New Delhi via China on the 12th of June and proposed a 3-point formula: a ceasefire, a joint working group to review the line of control and its demarcation on the ground, and a reciprocal visit by the Indian Foreign Minister the following week. This formula was rejected by New Delhi. The Central Command of the Indian Army sent tapes of a telephone conversation between Pakistan Chief of General Staff Lieutenant Muhammad Aziz Khan and General Pervez Musharraf to Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. In June, Prime Minister Vajpayee made a public statement that India would not cross the international border or the LOC. The author raised the issue with Prime Minister Vajpayee and Brajesh Mishra, who suggested that the military would have no alternative but to cross the LOC. The middle of June was the most anxious period of the war, as bitter fighting continued in all sectors. On 16 June, Brajesh Mishra informed the U.S. National Security Advisor Sandy Berger that India would not be able to continue with its policy of restraint for long, and that the government of India might have to let them cross the border any day. The pressure for escalation increased, and the author warned Army commanders to be prepared for escalation along the LOC or the international border. The Pakistani army showed signs of nervousness during this period, and the author advised the CCS staff to prepare an intelligence assessment on Pakistan's intentions and options. The escalation was avoided when the forces recaptured Tololing and Point 5140 in the Dras sector, which enabled the enemy to interdict the buildup along the highway and prevent movement to the posts on the LOC. The 56th Mountain Brigade attempted to capture Tololing in May, but failed. They launched a new attack on the Tololing Point 5140 complex on 13th June, resulting in 5 days of hand-to-hand fighting. The Pakistan DGMO, Nirmal Chandar ZJ, was informed of Pakistan Army units' involvement, and a map with the LOC clearly marked on it was recovered. The recapturing of Tololing was a major success, and the media wanted to know more. The media briefing in South Block, New Delhi, highlighted the fact that the Pakistan Army had conceived, planned, and executed the Kargil incursion. The Indian forces captured several points along the ridge lines and mountaintops of Kargil, including Point 5140 in Dras, Point 5203 in Batalik, Three Pimples in Dras, the Jubar complex in Batalik, Tiger Hill in Dras, Point 4875 in Mashko. Political directive. The Indian Army's victory in Kargil was a testament to its unmatched bravery, grit, and determination. The battle took place on the Tololing ridgeline, less than 5 kilometers from Dras town and the Srinagar-Kargil-Leh National Highway. The 56th Mountain Brigade of 8th Mountain Division was inducted into Dras and given the responsibility for eviction operations. The Indian Army's valiant officers and men who participated in the battles won many awards, including 3 Param Veer Chakras, India's highest gallantry award. The first victory in the Kargil conflict was capturing Tololing, top point 4590 after 3 weeks of intense fighting. The Indian Army recaptured Point 5140 by the 56th Mountain Brigade, leading to the capture of Rocky Knob and Humps 9 and 10. The same battalion was given the task of capturing Three Pimples, a cluster of sharp mountaintops near Point 5100. Tiger Hill, a significant feature in India's military history, was a priority after the recapture of Tololing and adjacent features. Brigadier MPS Bajwa assigned the mission of capturing Tiger Hill to 18 Grenadiers and 8 Sikh, assisted by a crack team from the High-Altitude Warfare School. The Indian Army's 18 Grenadiers hoisted the Indian tricolor on Tiger Hill top on 8 July, marking 2 of the best victories for the battalion. The Pakistani troops in the Batalik sector of the Ladakh Range faced slow progress in their operations due to the enemy's leftover weapons, ammunition, equipment, rations, and stores. The 111 Gorkha Rifles Battalion was inducted into the Batalik sector to participate in the initial operations of the 70 Infantry Brigade for securing the Yaldor Axis. Operation Vijay was a high-intensity operation in high-altitude mountains, requiring unconventional artillery support. The enhanced reach and versatility of weapons and ammunition allowed the artillery to cause destruction and damage more effectively than in the past. Nearly 50 fire units were employed in the area of operations for various purposes, firing nearly 250,000 rounds and rockets over 90 days. Field guns, such as 155mm Bofors howitzers, 130mm medium guns, and even 122mm Grad multi-barrel rocket launchers, were employed in a direct firing role, engaging targets at distances up to 17 kilometers. Several gallant individuals were awarded Veer Chakras, Yudh Seva medals, Sena medals, and Chief of Army Staff's unit citation for their exploits in mountain warfare. The Army Aviation Corps performed exceptionally well, flying over 2,500 missions and logging over 2,700 flying hours. Helicopters evacuated over 900 casualties from the battlefront, mostly from makeshift helipads despite the enemy's small arms and artillery fire. Major Gautam Shasikumar Khat and Major Prabhu Nath Prasad received Veer Chakras, Yud Seva medals, Sena medals, and 1 Sena medal, distinguished. The Corps of Engineers performed Herculean tasks, such as laying and lifting mines, setting up booby traps, or building roads, bridges, helipads, field defenses, and living accommodation. 12 engineer regiments were deployed during the Kargil War, constructing Class 9 roads, 250 kilometers of new mule tracks, and 20 kilometers of foot tracks. They also recovered about 5,000 mines manually. The Corps of Signals supported the operations effectively, providing the normal communications network and innovative arrangements, such as iridium satellite telephones for artillery observation posts, Inmarsat satellite terminals between headquarters, and handheld walkie-talkie sets to monitor convoy movement and logistic stocking progress. The Pakistan Army and the Indian Army faced challenges during the Kargil War, including a short warning period, sudden accretion of force levels, and enemy interference along the Srinagar-Kargil-Leh highway. The Army logistics teams worked tirelessly to keep momentum going during the war. The Animal Transport Battalion personnel proved their worth, with Naib Risaldar Prem Singh receiving the Sena Medal and the 874 AT Battalion becoming the first Army Service Corps unit to be awarded the Chief of Army Staff's Unit Citation. The Army Medical Corps personnel worked with professionalism and dedication, ensuring that only 14 casualties were admitted to hospitals. The Army Ordnance Corps fulfilled the requirement of almost 300 guns, mortars, rocket launchers, small arms ammunition, and other related equipment. Nearly 100 special trains were run to move ammunition and other stores from various depots to the railhead at Jammu, from where they were transported to the front. The electrical and mechanical engineers ensured that all weapons and equipment were shipshape and in perfect working condition, and they also performed the recovery and repairs of armaments. Over 650 vehicles were recovered, 200 engine assemblies replaced, and 5,000 miscellaneous repairs carried out in situ. Other units contributed to logistic support, such as the Corps of Military Police, the Postal Service, the Remount and Veterinary Corps, and several smaller organizations. The Indian Army decided to recognize collective actions and contributions of units, introducing the COAS Unit Citation. The Army Wives Welfare Association, or AWWA, is a unique non-official organization in India that handles a large number of soldiers' welfare activities and provides insight into Indian military sociology. It is led by Army wives and operates alongside the entire command hierarchy of the Army. The AWA aims to provide care and support to the families of all Army personnel, including the deceased, wounded, and ailing. It is active in all Army stations across the country, and played a significant role in maintaining the morale of soldiers fighting the Kargil War. The AWA's motto is caring and sharing, and it reaches out to all those in distress. The organization has various committees, including the President, who sets guidelines and provides impetus at the highest level, and the individual presidents at the command, corps, division, and area levels. The AWA has been active in anti-terrorist and counterinsurgency operations in Jammu and Kashmir and northeastern states for decades. During the war, the AWA in India was tasked with caring for the families of soldiers killed in battle, seriously wounded and disabled soldiers in hospitals, families living in cantonments, reaching out to soldiers on the battlefield, and setting up collection centers for relief material. The President, Central AWA, met with the wives of the President of India and Vice President of India, Mahila Dakshita Samiti, to discuss the task and priorities. The AWA's efforts focused on caring for soldiers' families, providing relief material, and establishing contact with the families of the martyrs. The President visited the families at the Param Airport Technical Area in Delhi, sharing their sorrow and ensuring they could be contacted at all hours. The AWA members continued to work to wipe the tears of the anguished people who were fighting quietly to come to terms with their loss. The advice and guidance offered to families had to be based on individual circumstances, considering long-term requirements and investment decisions. Job offers were made for young widows, ensuring they received jobs commensurate with their status and could lead a life of respectability. The central government announced substantial compensation packages for war widows and parents of unmarried soldiers during the Kargil War. State governments also contributed large sums to affected families. As the war was televised, images and statistics made a powerful impact, leading to contributions from various sources. However, the large sums of money often became the source of a tussle between young widows and their parents-in-law. Modifications were suggested to the Army headquarters, allowing compensation, ex gratia payments, and pension to be divided between the soldier's wife and his parents. Hundreds of critically injured soldiers poured into field hospitals in different parts of the war zones. AWA volunteers from the Patients' Welfare Committee worked silently behind the scenes, reaching out to the wounded and sick, reassuring them and consoling them. They provided them with fresh undergarments, shaving kits, soaps, shampoos, sleeping suits, airbags, slippers, thermos flasks, writing material, pens, magazines in regional languages, and get well cards with personal handwritten messages signed by the president. The AWA ensured that copies of videotapes on end-of-life limbs were sent to all command hospitals so that amputees could see the ease with which people fitted with artificial limbs could function and draw inspiration. A large number of private sector companies, NGOs, and individuals helped by sending a variety of items such as air conditioners, refrigerators, water coolers, television sets, bed sheets, and pillows. For families living in cantonments, the duration of the Kargil War marked a period of fear, anxiety, tension, and stress. The AWWA members looking after these families were particularly active, visiting their colonies, meeting the ladies, providing necessary information about their husbands, and taking special care of their children. The Central AWWA president wrote a personal note to the commanding officers and subedar majors of every unit involved in Operation Vijay, emphasizing the importance of the association's humanitarian role. She also sent 5,000 packets of sweets to forward areas, each containing a handwritten note of good wishes from a member of the AWWA. Many soldiers were unaware of the sweets' origin, so many responded to the manager or the sweet shop that packed the boxes. The letters expressed appreciation for the sweets but also made one feel proud of the soldiers. Some soldiers wrote on behalf of their teammates while others expressed gratitude for the sweets. The president wrote in Hindi to each soldier explaining what the AWWA stood for and praying for their success. The AWWA members met with hundreds of ordinary people daily, expressing their solidarity with the soldiers. A young woman donated money to the AWWA, children from a primary school handed over pocket money, and an inspector general of police held an exhibition of her paintings and donated proceeds to the Army Central Welfare Fund. Namrata Ramakrishnan received greeting cards and a sum of 2 rupees from Indore, expressing her children's deep sympathy for the soldiers. The president appeared on various TV channels and participated in radio programs to make the public aware of the humanitarian role played by the AWA and the need to help soldiers. With a philosophy rooted in compassion, the AWWA continues to support the regular army in carrying out its diverse activities and achieving its goals. The Pakistan Army's operations during Operation Vijay were conducted on an institutionalized basis, with synergy and unity among the 3 services. The Chiefs of Staff Committee and Cabinet Committee on Security were closely involved, providing a refreshing change in decision-making processes. Regular briefings were carried out in the Military Operations Room of the Army Headquarters and the Military Intelligence Directorate. The Indian Air Force played a different role in the Kargil conflict, using air power to support ground operations, carry out reconnaissance, interdict enemy supply routes, destroy enemy footholds, and establish strategic and tactical superiority over the enemy. The Air Force carried out its operational missions effectively, considering terrain configuration and available technical capabilities. The Air Force engaged intruders with bombs, rockets, and specialized ammunition to soften their locations and interdict supply lines. The hostile terrain and targets made visual spotting and engaging targets difficult. The Indian Air Force faced significant challenges during the conflict, including limited controllers and the need to engage targets close by. 2 MiG fighter aircraft were lost due to engine flameout and being hit by an enemy surface-to-air missile. An Mi-17 armed helicopter was also lost while attacking the Taloling feature in the Dras sector. The Air Force tried to neutralize the enemy's air defenses by firing from a standoff distance. Initially, fighter aircraft dropped heavy bombs in dive attacks, but pilots had to cater for variable wind speed and pressure density conditions at high altitudes. The Mirage 2000 proved to be the most successful fighter plane, using its sophisticated navigational attack system. The Air Force deployed nearly 50 radars, mobile observation flights and transport aircraft to induct units and formation headquarters. The Air Force completed 1,050 strike and escort sorties, 483 air defense sorties, 152 reconnaissance sorties, and 24 miscellaneous sorties. However, no targets were engaged across the line of control. The Air Force's efforts at gathering electronic intelligence and photo reconnaissance were ineffective due to their inability to overcome adverse weather conditions, particularly when there was a low cloud base. The Kargil War in Pakistan highlighted the importance of close air and ground support missions in high-altitude mountainous terrain and the need for adequate Air Force equipment. The conflict also highlighted the need for improved tactical and strategic intelligence gathering mechanisms, better dissemination of intelligence and closer, real-time liaison between the Army and Air Force at all levels. The Indian Navy under the codename Operation Talwar played a crucial role in winning the war. The naval headquarters noticed night landing facilities at Pasni Airfield in May 1999, leading to 86 instructions to remain alert and enhance security measures. The Western Naval Command deployed INS Taragiri on barrier patrol off Dwarka, and 2 Dornier aircraft of the Information Warfare Squadron began electronic support measures probes. Wartime routine was introduced at all levels, and a specialized group of officers was tasked with operational analysis, assessment, and planning. The Navy also helped the Army in various ways, providing specialized equipment and survey parties to locate enemy gun positions on the international border and the LOC. The activities of the Navy's Information Warfare Dornier Squadron were extended to executing surveillance and electronic intelligence tasks along the western land border to locate enemy air defense radars. The success of this mission resulted in an institutionalized framework for conducting joint operations. During the 1999 Kashmir conflict, the U.S. administration was in close contact with Pakistan and India, with President Bill Clinton communicating with Prime Ministers Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Nawaz Sharif. The U.S. emphasized that Pakistan's withdrawal of troops from the line of control was crucial to ending the conflict and resolving the Kashmir issue. In July 1999, President Clinton and Sharif held talks at Blair House, Washington, D.C., which resulted in a joint statement urging immediate cessation of hostilities and intensification of bilateral efforts once the line of control had been fully restored. The U.S. insisted on Pakistan's withdrawal of troops to its side of the line of control, the Pakistan Army's preparations for developing strategic weapons, and Nawaz Sharif's plea for direct U.S. intervention in the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. On 3 July, the U.S. officials received evidence that Pakistanis were preparing their nuclear arsenal for possible deployment. Nawaz Sharif asked for the U.S.'s direct intervention in the Jammu and Kashmir dispute and fixed a timetable for that purpose. On 6 July, the Directors General Military Operations of India and Pakistan held a telephonic conversation, revealing Pakistani duplicity and difficulty in identifying dead Pakistani soldiers. The Indian DGMO ended the conversation abruptly. The political situation in the Kashmir conflict changed significantly, with the possibility of Pakistani forces withdrawing due to their lack of trust. After extensive discussions, a phased withdrawal of Pakistani forces was agreed upon, with a ceasefire restricted to the sector where the withdrawal would be carried out. At the Lahore Summit in February 1999, Prime Ministers Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Nawaz Sharif acknowledged the nuclear capabilities of India and Pakistan, adding to their responsibility for avoiding conflict. They agreed to intensify efforts to resolve all issues, including the Jammu and Kashmir issue. The Memorandum of Understanding signed between the Foreign Secretary of India and Pakistan called for bilateral consultations on security concepts and nuclear doctrines to develop measures for confidence building in nuclear and conventional fields. In Pakistan, the military high command saw no contradictions between the Lahore Declaration, the Memorandum of Understanding, and the launching of Operation Badr. Pakistan's military strategy for the Kargil episode was based on the belief that Pakistan's demonstrated nuclear weapons capability in May 1998 was sufficient to prevent the escalation of the situation in Kargil to a full-scale conventional war level. However, India's decision to commit all three services for waging land, air, and sea battles surprised both political and military leadership in Pakistan. On May 31st, Pakistan issued a second nuclear alert, cautioning its Foreign Secretary, Shamshad Ahmad, to utilize all available weapons to safeguard their territorial integrity. This statement was quickly highlighted by the foreign media and raised hackles in political circles around the world. The international community became increasingly concerned about the escalation of war between two nuclear-capable states, particularly Pakistan and India. In mid-June 1999, India threatened to escalate the conflict beyond the line of control if Pakistan did not withdraw its forces from Jammu and Kashmir. The Pakistan Army's role was exposed, leading to demands for the immediate withdrawal of Pakistani troops from Kargil. The U.S. Congress recommended suspending loans from international financial institutions to Pakistan until it withdrew its troops to its side of the line of control. The G8 and the European Union called for the intruders to withdraw and Pakistan to respect the sanctity of the line of control. After agreeing to withdraw Pakistani forces, Nawaz Sharif claimed that a fourth Indo-Pak war had been averted. This led to a serious debate on Pakistan's nuclear strategy and the effectiveness of its nuclear deterrence. The Pakistani political leadership attempted to shift responsibility for the crisis to the military high command, but Army Chief Pervez Musharraf denied this allegation. The failure of the Kargil operation, and the attempt to blame the army leadership, resulted in strained relations between Nawaz Sharif and the army leadership, leading to the military coup in Pakistan on October 12, 1999. Bruce Riedel's monograph on the Kargil conflict in 1999 reveals that there was no credible evidence or threat of nuclear weapons being used during the conflict. The U.S. administration had more information about the situation than Indian intelligence agencies, with President Clinton and U.S. National Security Advisor Sandy Berger regularly in touch with Prime Minister Vajpayee. The Pakistani nuclear rhetoric, combined with reports on the deployment of the Indian Army on the western border and Pakistani Army preparations in the Tilla Ranges, caused the nuclear hype and hoopla in the Western media. The coverage of the nuclear danger factor was speculative and exaggerated, which suited the non-proliferation policy of the West. The Kargil crisis was pitched at a higher level because both nations had demonstrated their nuclear capabilities overtly. Brigadier Shaukat Qadir has put forward a Pakistani view that during the Kargil conflict, even a conventional war was never a possibility, let alone a nuclear war. The risk of a nuclear war lies in the intended use of nuclear weapons, as well as factors such as irresponsible proliferation and accidents. In India, nuclear weapons are meant for defense and serve as political instruments rather than military tools. The government has made its nuclear policy and doctrine transparent and has shown responsible restraint since the initial irresponsible statements made by some political leaders after the Pokhran II tests. In Pakistan, the situation is different, with the army controlling the nuclear infrastructure and policy. The nuclear policy and doctrine have been kept deliberately ambiguous, and it is unlikely that the Pakistani army will resort to nuclear weapons unless its vital interests are threatened and its existence is at stake. Despite appearing tentative or lacking a proactive approach, political decision-makers in India have consistently responded courageously to serious national security challenges in accordance with nationally accepted policies. While nuclear weapons do offer some strategic stability, the danger should not be overstated. Pakistan has been indulging in nuclear signaling more than India, possibly to make its deterrence policies appear more credible. Leaders in both countries must realize that these signals could be misread or misinterpreted. In a critical situation, greater clarity can be achieved with more discipline and caution, and fewer spokespersons interacting with the media on such issues. The Indian Army faced persistent problems in modernizing its forces, including inadequacy of funds for capital purchases, inability to develop and produce required weapon systems and equipment indigenously, and tedious procurement and decision-making procedures. The Army generally follows the principle that critical weapons and equipment should be available over 3 generations, covering a span of 25 to 30 years, to ensure a balance between fiscal demands and operational readiness. However, when the Kargil War began, the deficiencies of weapons, equipment, ammunition, and spares were more worrying. The lack of force multipliers, passive night sights, laser rangefinders, outdated signal communication equipment, and weapon locating radars were some of the issues that hindered modernization efforts. The Indian Army faced shortages of weapons and ammunition during the Kargil War, leading to the allocation of extra Bofors regiments and artillery ammunition to the Northern Command. However, the command had limited special winter clothing and equipment, causing staff members to work tirelessly to meet immediate requirements. The war also highlighted the nation's surveillance capabilities, with satellite imagery being unsatisfactory and the system of interpretation and delivery slow. Another issue was the low ammunition reserves for many important weapons, with the transport fleet in most units being below their entitlement. Fuel containers and some types of oils, lubricants and greases were also insufficient. The Central Command Service was persuaded to lift the decades-old ban on the Bofors Company to enable the purchase of urgently needed spares for the guns and other weapons purchased from it earlier. The Bofors artillery gun, which was the most useful weapon during the Kargil War, was the most useful weapon during the war. However, the Indian Army had no spares for the guns due to the ban imposed on the manufacturers and the inability to import them from other vendors or manufacture them within India. The efforts and struggles of the three services to make up deficiencies and modernize were hardly secrets. In June 1999, the Army's chief, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, responded to a journalist's question about how to fight in the face of severe shortages, stating that they would fight with whatever they had. The Indian government agreed to procure essential items urgently during the Kargil War, despite the fact that the procurement process was not entirely successful. The ordnance factories attempted to address the deficiencies but faced difficulties in obtaining items that were not available within the country and had to be imported at short notice. This incident highlighted the importance of careful planning for security needs and the potential for vendors to exploit situations. The focus on procurement during the war has led to controversies and politicization of the issue. The primary objective of procurement was to bring the forces to a certain level of readiness to deal with the perceived threat more effectively. The process of translating money into capability is time-consuming. As weapons and equipment must be manufactured or purchased, tactics and procedures reviewed, personnel trained, and maintenance professionals built up. The cost and time to build up combat capabilities increase exponentially with each year of neglect. Defense-related debates in Parliament focus on purchases, with the opposition blaming the government for the lack of preparedness, while civil and military officials become more apprehensive of taking decisions. The media, Siege, PAC, and CVC all harp on scams, procedural lapses, and delays in defense purchases, but hardly anyone is punished. A revolution in military affairs, information systems, and net-centric warfare is not possible without the timely acquisition of relevant weapons and equipment. China has maintained an independent foreign policy and maintained neutrality with Pakistan during the Kargil conflict. However, the People's Liberation Army increased its activity along the line of actual control in Ladakh and opposite Arunachal Pradesh. This increase was partly attributed to China's policy of improving infrastructure in the border region. However, the Chinese increased their patrolling activities in the disputed area of Trig Heights in June 1999, a provocative deployment in Chance, and the induction of additional troops opposite Arunachal Pradesh. This marked an attempt to assert their claim over the disputed areas. Chinese patrolling activities occurred in several locations, including Demchok, Trig Heights, Pangong TSO, and Chance. The People's Liberation Army's director in the Department of Armament visited Islamabad to help the Pakistan Army overcome its deficiencies in conventional armament, ammunition, and equipment. The strategic relations between Pakistan and China are well known, with Pakistan increasing its vigilance and patrolling to match PLA activities. India shares a long boundary with China, which is emerging as a global power economically and militarily. The strategic implications of China's moves for India must consider factors such as the unresolved boundary issue, China's aggressive policies, Chinese strategic influence, close strategic relations between Pakistan and China, and the historical fact that rapid changes in the international power equilibrium seldom occur without conflict and turbulence. After the 1962 Sino-India border war, Pakistan ceded a portion of Jammu and Kashmir territory to China, establishing a long-term strategic relationship. China's military strategic thinking has evolved over the past 50 years, focusing on net-centric warfare using advanced systems capabilities. China's defense expenditure in 2004 was around $25 billion, and it is concentrating on establishing missile forces, rapid deployment forces, amphibious warfare capability, improving joint services, operational and logistics capabilities, and developing information warfare systems. Despite underlying differences between China and the USA regarding strategic economic human rights and environmental issues, both nations continue to engage constructively. In the next 5 to 10 years, China's strategic focus will be on the Asia-Pacific region, particularly on Taiwan reunification and new threats like jihadi terrorism. India's progress in areas south of the Himalayan watershed has been negligible. India's strategic policy towards China must be guided by the principle of cooperate but ensure security. Regions close to China, such as Kargil, the Siachen Glacier, and the area west of the Karakoram Pass, are geographically and strategically interlinked. At ground level, there is a need for an adequately strong, integrated defensive posture with necessary logistic support. Super History Rumble on screen text. India's armed forces maintain an apolitical stance, adhering to the constitutionally elected government and supporting free and fair elections. This tradition is a source of pride for the nation and its members of the armed forces. The reasons for this stance include the military and its traditions, political leadership, egalitarian society, and other democratic institutions. To maintain this tradition, the nation must be vigilant and help the armed forces maintain their apolitical stance. The Kargil War was a time when political coalitions adjusted and compromises were required by political coalitions. The military leadership was concerned that political exploitation of the war could undermine the neutral character of the armed forces and affect its professionalism. After the war, 2 serious security incidents occurred, including the shooting down of Pakistan maritime reconnaissance aircraft and the hijacking of Indian Airlines flight IC-814 to Kandahar in Afghanistan. The politicization of the Kargil War has led to delays in making essential defense purchases and affecting the operational capabilities of the armed forces. Public awareness about defense matters and the armed forces is essential to maintaining national security and uniformity. Political interference in the promotion system of the armed forces should not be attempted, and increased interaction between the armed forces and universities and academic institutions can help improve public understanding of national security issues and training personnel. The Kargil War in India was the first television war in the country, symbolizing the nation's struggle against the enemy. Information warfare, a psychological pressure tactic, has become crucial in modern warfare since the First Gulf War in 1991. The strategic justification for the information war is that a trinity of government, armed forces and people wage war, with the media playing a crucial role in shaping national and international opinion. Information technology has significantly impacted media coverage during wars, with factors such as multiplicity of sources, speed, instant reach, transparency, and excessive inputs dominating. However, these factors can also obfuscate facts and confuse the target audience. The first major lesson in information warfare was learned during Operation Blue Star, where the Indian government imposed strict censorship on the media, leading to dangerous rumors and disinformation campaigns. During Operation Vijay, both the military and media learned new concepts and methodologies, winning the information battle primarily due to factors such as full accessibility, transparency, a holistic approach, and credible daily media briefings. The coordination and synchronization of war coverage in India were achieved through the unstinted support of media persons and their excellent rapport with them. During the initial stages of the conflict, journalists were not permitted beyond the Zoji La Pass due to large-scale troop movements and security reasons. A multi-pronged strategy was evolved, including an interactive website, the Military Operations Directorate handling briefings, the Intelligence Directorate working on psychological aspects related to war, and electronic, print, and cyber media. The Kargil War in India was a significant event where the military and media exposed Pakistani lies and disinformation. The military used various methods, such as taped telephone conversations, official documents and photographs, to dispel doubts about the war's origins and military involvement. The Army Liaison Cell organized discussions with senior strategic analysts to explain national policy and military strategy without going into operational details. The images of the Kargil martyrs reached almost all parts of India, representing India's cultural and religious pluralism. However, the military and media did not engage in deliberate misinformation tactics. The almost instantaneous war reporting, based on journalist experience and analytical capability, helped obtain overwhelming public support for the war effort. Tensions between the Ministry of Defense and the Army headquarters arose due to the military's approach and, the media's involvement. During the war, the Army faced unexpected problems due to professional competition among media persons, political polarization, and instances of unverified or deliberate reporting. After the war, both the Army and the media went in for self-introspection, with most experienced journalists feeling their media reports had revealed the truth. However, there was little time to train public relations officers on military, strategic, and operational matters. Media-related infrastructure at the corps and division levels needed to be upgraded for coping with wartime contingencies. In India, information battle concepts and procedures need to be developed, considering the capabilities, characteristics, and sensitivities of the people. The Kargil War was a limited conventional conflict under the nuclear shadow, where space below the threshold was available. The Indian Army had to exercise restraint to avoid losing casualties due to modern weapon systems. The political embargo on crossing the line of control or the border was authorized by the Cabinet Committee on Security, or CCS. After recapturing Tolaling and Point 5140, India gained confidence to continue offensive actions in the area of conflict successfully. Pakistan's irresponsible behavior and lack of trustworthiness as an overt nuclear power were exposed to the international community, marking a significant setback for the country. The Kargil operation was a major setback for Pakistan, leading to a sense of humiliation and disgrace for the people of Pakistan, who were forced to withdraw due to international isolation. The US initially equated India and Pakistan by urging mutual restraint, but by June 1999, the USA's surveillance satellites and intelligence sources confirmed the Pakistan Army's involvement and accepted the credibility of their statements. This change in attitude was influenced by the ongoing Jaswant-Singh-Strobe-Talbot dialogue over strategic issues. India's politico-military strategy during the Kargil War provided opportunities for New Delhi and Washington to strengthen relations, reflecting a positive trend that continues even today. China's response to the Kargil War was unexpected, as it chose to spurn Pakistan's overtures on Kargil and go along with the overwhelming world opinion that saw India as a victim of aggression. The Kargil War in Pakistan, well, it led to a discord between the Pakistani Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, and Army Chief, Pervez Musharraf. This tension eventually culminated in the 12th of October, 1999 military coup in Pakistan. The Kargil conflict between India and Pakistan was a political and strategic issue that lasted until the upcoming general elections. The ruling alliance parties wanted to capitalize on the victory achieved by the armed forces, while the opposition tried to deny them an advantage. In December 1999, the Central Committee of Strategic Studies, or CCS, formed an experts committee to review the events leading up to the Pakistani aggression in the Kargil district of Ladakh. The report highlighted the importance of defending every inch of territory, as losing territory is unacceptable to the public and political authority. After the war, many defense analysts felt that an activist policy had become a political imperative for India. The Kargil Review Committee report highlighted serious deficiencies in India's security management system, particularly in intelligence, border patrolling, and defense management. The Prime Minister established a group of ministers to review the national security system and formulate proposals for implementation. The Defense Intelligence Agency has been established to coordinate the functioning of different intelligence directorates in the service headquarters and meet long-term strategic requirements. A Defense Ministers' Council on Production has been set up to lay down broad objectives for long-term policies and planning on production, simplification of procedures, and procurement of major weapon systems and platforms. A Defense Procurement Board has been set up under the Defense Secretary to undertake the entire gamut of procurement functions and bring about a higher degree of professionalism and cost-effectiveness in the process. Pakistan has been convinced that India would not resort to war due to fear of escalation and the possession of nuclear deterrence. The Kargil War and events have highlighted new trends in warfare and the structure of the armed forces, driven by technology and strategic considerations. In July 2001, the Agra Summit was held between India and Pakistan to discuss peace after 2 years of the Kargil conflict. Atal Bihari Vajpayee's initiative to hold talks with the new Pakistani military ruler surprised many in India and abroad. However, Musharraf's obsession with Kashmir made the road to peace bumpy, as the stakes were very high, the agenda was fairly limited, and expectations were low. The priorities at Agra should have been to create trust and strengthen military and non-military confidence-building measures. The Indian subcontinent faces a complex relationship with Pakistan, with the people of both countries being sensitive and easily charged up. Over 5 decades of confrontation have made both Indians and Pakistanis suspicious, jingoistic, and impatient. The media's overenthusiastic coverage of the Agra Summit raised public hopes, but these were shattered by the gun battle outside the Indian parliament. Inviting General Pervez Musharraf to Agra was not the right thing to do, as the military was not consulted, and many senior officers from the armed forces were surprised and upset. This resulted in the military and diplomatic gains and sacrifices made during the Kargil War being forgotten. Under Musharraf, Pakistan abandoned the Taliban and joined the coalition against terrorism, marking a major break from its past and the beginning of a fresh chapter in relations between Islamabad and Washington. The India-Pakistan military standoff, from 2001 to 2002, was a result of Pakistan's strategy of employing terrorism as an instrument of state foreign policy. India adopted a two-pronged strategy for applying pressure on Pakistan during the standoff, the deployment of armed forces and a threat of waging a war to back diplomatic initiatives. 3 important lessons to be learned from the events and prolonged mobilization deployment are: Do not confuse the aims of a war or coercive diplomacy. No country can afford to take on external forces when its armed forces have to simultaneously deal with internal crises such as riots or terrorism. India is on the brink of becoming a major economic and military power, with its gross national product expected to surpass that of European economies in the coming 2 decades. This growth will impact South Asia, North Central Asia, Iran, and other Middle East and Southeast Asian countries. India should prioritize 5 key elements to address Pakistan's issues: engaging civil society in Pakistan, giving up support for jihadi forces, strengthening people-to-people contact, and resolving minor bilateral irritants affecting the Indo-Pak relationship. Pakistan's GDP is around $75 billion, but it faces challenges such as low per capita income, significant urban and rural unemployment, low literacy rates, and inadequate education. The country spends about 4% of its GDP on defense, while India outspends Pakistan nearly 3-to-1. To sustain economic success, the government must contain defense expenditure, increase investments in agriculture and industry, alleviate poverty, and use human capital judiciously. Pakistan's strategic issues include military domination of politics, polarization between the military and political class, ethnic and provincial groups, and jihadis and secularists. The economic and military capability gap between India and Pakistan will continue to grow, and Pervez Musharraf's regime has not yet eschewed supporting terrorism as an instrument of state policy. The long-term Indo-Pak relationship and benefits depend on economic interdependence and sustained cooperative security. 4 major security issues that would significantly impact the current Indo-Pak peace dialogue include cross-border terrorism, the Siachen Glacier, Jammu and Kashmir, and nuclear confidence-building measures. The Kargil War, fought between India and Pakistan in 1999, resulted in India reclaiming territory from Pakistani forces, leading to a military victory for India. However, the conflict also had diplomatic and military consequences for Pakistan, including international backlash and withdrawal of support. Over 1,000 soldiers from both sides lost their lives, and many more were injured, leaving families and communities devastated. The war also led to significant military expenditures for both countries, and strained their resources, impacting the socio-economic situation in the region. Diplomatic fallout included no change in borders, with both countries still claiming the region and the line of control remaining the de facto border. The international community, particularly the United States, urged both countries to de-escalate and avoid further conflict. The war also strengthened India's military, leading to reforms in equipment and tactics, and the doctrine of cold start, an Indian military strategy for future conflicts with Pakistan. Despite the war's military victory, the underlying issue of Kashmir remains unresolved, fueling tensions between the two nations. The Kargil War bolstered Indian nationalism, and reinforced India's commitment to safeguarding its territorial integrity. Despite these challenges, the Kargil War did little to resolve the underlying tensions between India and Pakistan, particularly regarding Kashmir.